Hello, Hockey World. It's Wednesday, I think. It's Wednesday. I don't know. I didn't have power for a while. It's Wednesday, March 15th, 2017.
Beware of the Ides of March. I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. The podcast comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world and everything that's gone right or wrong. And there's something that is going wrong today. So when things go wrong with women's hockey, we find Kate Samini and bring her in.
Too often. Things go wrong too often. Though it is great to see you guys.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Sorry, it's under such crazy circumstances, Granna. Yeah, so Kate works with the area of the Hockey Writers, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you can follow Kate on Twitter. We'll get you out. Or what's your Twitter address again?
It's just my name. It's K_CIMINI.
Cool. I'll put that out. I'll tweet that out too.
Hopefully easy to remember.
yeah, for sure. So Russ alerted me of this situation. Russ, why don't you give like a little bit of the background first, and then we'll get into the discussion, because I think a lot of people are coming to this just it's only been about 3 hours old in news terms. So
here's the thing. So last year when the women's soccer team won gold, the U.S. women's soccer team, we found out that they split up some money, and it turned out to be a pretty paltry sum. It was about $2 million or something, and the men's team from Germany got $35 million. So then, that sort of caused a little stir. And then when we saw what the women weren't getting paid, they actually weren't getting paid right up until like pool play, until they started winning. Whereas the U.S. men's soccer team, who's hideous in comparison, were getting paid just to show up. And so this thing
and getting paid more just to show up.
Yeah, just get paid
to
more
lose.
To show up. Yeah, to lose. And so this caused a big stir. And apparently now for the last year, the women's team for hockey has been negotiating. The World Championship is supposed to be in Plymouth, Michigan in a couple weeks. And the same lawyer that helped the U.S. women's team out for soccer is now helping the women out for hockey, because, again, they're getting paid something like $1,000 a month for just the months that they're actually participating, and very little otherwise. Kate had an actual number that she could talk about in a minute. And it's just, it's frustrating, because it's, in this country, we always want to say, especially when, you have a wife or you may have a daughter, hey, you can grow up to be anything and you can do anything. But then when you don't get paid to do that, and you're the best in the world, and our women's team is the best in the world, and they've been that way for a long time, they're not even getting paid like a mediocre team. It's really frustrating.
Well, as I guess Samantha B recently said regarding a different situation, everybody is related to a woman somehow, Russ. And so at the end of the day, believe it or not, almost everybody. She's a chart that was like a big 100% chart that people related to women in some way, shape, or form.
Even Donald Trump.
So yeah, let's not get into that. But so Kate, expound on what's good. What are your thoughts here?
I can't say I'm all that surprised, but I am definitely disappointed. And particularly for women's hockey, it seems that every time these women turn around, they're getting knocked around or taken advantage of somehow, be that money or some other way. And of course, there was that blow in November to the National Women's Hockey League players, many of whom are U.S. Olympians, who had their salaries cut by at least a third.
Right.
So for them to be in negotiations with USA Hockey, and for us to find out that not only are they being paid poorly, they don't even have a development team going on, or rather, they don't have money going into developing. Yeah,
right. The NCAA gets $35 million for funding, or something close to that.
3.5 million.
3.5. Sorry, yes. And
I thought it was 35 as well. I missed the decimal point at first.
Okay. And then the women don't get anything.
They have nothing, which is absolutely, it seems ridiculous to me in light of the fact that the women's Olympic field is so short. There's 5 teams at most that could win gold right now. Yeah. And to look at those women and say, well, you're getting silver on $6,000 for the 6 months we sequester you, plus, however much we give you for medaling, which I think in the U.S. is about $15,000 for a silver medal. So overall, they're averaging $21,000 for 4 years of work.
Yeah, they're paying to play this sport. I mean, there's no question. I mean, they're putting out more money than they're making to do this.
Absolutely. And the women's team also drew more eyeballs than the men's silver gold competition last year. not last year, I'm sorry, last Olympics. So that was 2014, a little while ago.
No, that's I mean,
Yeah,
and that's a whole that we'll definitely touch on here because it is connected to what's going on now in the NHL. But
absolutely.
what's happening there in the negotiations that are ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
This is the worst possible time for the NHL to be asking for what they're asking for from it's millions of dollars. So it's just crazy when you think about it.
Now, somebody who I know is involved with the CWHL told me that the way they're getting their money is the host cities, when the host cities sign up to get these events, that there's a percentage that will go to USA Hockey. And so now you see how little the percentage drips down to the women. And, and of course, there's always going to be wise guys that say, well, how much money do the women's team, does the women's team generate? And to me, it's irrelevant because the host city's paying an X amount anyhow. But if they are generating more eyeballs online and on television, then that makes this even worse.
Well, and I honestly, I don't even care how many people are watching because it's simply ridiculous. They're basically throwing away future money by not investing in any young women who are developing right now. They're throwing away future gold medals by not saying, yeah, we're going to pay you, maybe they're not working full time year round. So maybe you give them $25,000 per year, $30,000. For the amount of time that they're putting in, they're working out every day. They're always watching what they're eating, which costs a lot of money. They have to live within a certain radius of a team. Mm-hmm. So they have to live within an area that's relatively high cost. I can only think of 1 or 2 players who live further out, but they have to spend more money on travel. So in the end, whether or not the men's team generates more revenue, you're not giving the women's team a chance to generate more revenue. In fact, the ESPNW article cited Megan Duggan, who said that she and the USA women's team had asked to play NHL stadiums for years. They could, if given the NHL stadium, given the proper marketing, they would absolutely be able to draw those people. There's tons of, women and girls and families who show up to the CWHL games, to the NWHL games. There's tons of people who tune into the Olympics. So if you build this, you're gonna draw. You can draw 20,000 people. You just have to actually invest the money. Right. And if they're not investing the money, of course they're not going to get the return. I mean, it's absolutely silly.
Was there any? I mean, there was no more exciting game than the Sochi, gold medal game versus Canada and the USA for women's hockey. It was literally it was the most exciting moment of that entire Olympics. And for me, I mean, it was insane, and it was horrible because you're watching it. It was some crazy time. I forget what it was, but it was an unbelievably dramatic ending, and there's no way you couldn't have put together a tour of those two teams into NHL cities right after that to have rematches, because I've covered them. I covered it in Vancouver, and it's legendary, the hatred between the two teams. There's so much there. There's so much you can build on to build a story. It's not hard. It's right there, right? So I mean, all you have to do is set a camera up between the two locker rooms and leave it on. I mean, that's really all you have to do.
I mean, that being said, and there's no question that the Canada-U.S. matchup at the Olympics is appointment television for everybody. I mean, I was enthralled. I was, into it big time. The problem is that you had that game once every 4 years, and I don't know whether that can be recaptured in a professional league. I've been to one of the Buffalo games for the NWHL. Is that I've been to one game. It was good. I mean, I had no complaints. It was entertaining, but can you recapture that rivalry on an ongoing basis to entertain fans in between those signature events? That's the thing that I'm a little bit.
Well, you have to feed off the other, right? Yeah.
I think we can have the same conversation about NBC's rivalry night.
Please, I mean, Kate, they're inventing rivalries. Where the freak?
I know.
Between Boston and Detroit, there is no rivalry.
I know, no, there is not. But the marketing is there. That
on rivalry night, I know, I agree with you completely.
But what I'm saying is that they're working to create that rivalry. The marketing is there, the money is there. You got to invest money to make money, right?
Yeah,
And I think it's clear the NWHL has almost no money right now. They're working on a shoestring basis, and they were to start, and having to cut salaries even further just shows that they're working with less than we even thought.
It's funny though. I was up at a Puck Talks event up in Toronto last week, and there were some members of the CWH, the Canadian League up there, and they were saying, they gave the NWHL some credit because at least they're trying to pay their players, whereas the Canadian League can't. I think that the future of the women's game is going to be a merger of those two leagues, if possible. And I don't know if that is possible. Probably.
And Kate Jordan knows more about it than me, but I blame. There's one entity to blame for this entire thing, and that's the NHL. I mean, I'll blame the NHL flat out. The NHL is missing. I know you're looking at me like that, but
I don't know.
No, the NHL is missing the boat here on marketing. Okay. They're missing the boat completely here because they are the ones who benefit. If you want to just go follow the money trail, they're the ones who benefit at the end of the day from women in hockey. And right now, at least, okay? And if every NHL team were to take a small amount of money they have and sponsor a women's team and market that and market it in the right way.
The only thing I'll say is in Gillette, they did have the women's outdoor game. Was it perfectly marketed? No. Were people interested? Sure.
Was it even broadcast, Russ?
Was it even broadcast? No. And so that was a big problem. But I will say this:
power to do this. The NHL has the power to get that on TV. The NHL has the relationships to get that.
You're right. They have the money. They have the power. They have the opportunity. But what they would want in return is more power. They would like control over the women's leagues. Or the women's league, if they do merge, if they are the ones investing all the money in it, which makes perfect sense. And I don't disagree that it would be great to see the NHL invest more money in the women's game. I also don't know that it's the best thing for it, because typically if it's a business for women, shouldn't it be a business by women?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. As usual, the NBA, the NHL tries to take its cues from the NBA, and I don't know whether the WNBA experiment has been a raging success. I mean, I think they got on ESPN because the NBA had a contract with ESPN, and it was okay. Here's more programming. Here's something we get to see. Great, but honestly, I've never watched a WNBA game. It's not something that really interests me. Now, I would watch hockey because I'm a hockey fan.
We gotta fix that.
But Kate, honestly, the thing is, I don't watch the NBA, so it's not like it's anything against women basketball players. It's against basketball. Basketball is not on my radar. But if there was a women's hockey league on ESPN or on a network that I can see, I would watch it occasionally because I'm a hockey fan.
I'll tell you, the most damning thing came out a little while ago on Twitter, where Cassie Campbell Pascal basically said Hockey Canada fixed this in 1998 when the women fought about it, and they had an advisory committee, and they fixed it. And the fact that it's been this many years, and I'm not going to do the math act because if I get it wrong, you'll laugh, but this many years that they haven't been able, that the U.S. hasn't been able to figure this out, and then they've had a year-long negotiation after what happened with the soccer team. Like, clearly that was embarrassing for them, and we all knew about it. We all read about it. It was a horrible situation, and nothing has gotten anywhere. Now, it's not always all on just USA Hockey. This could be lawyers mucking up the works, no question about it. But at the end of the day, something should be done, and the fact that they had to do this a couple of weeks before the tournament probably rips the heart out of the competitors, because even though they've won gold, 6 out of 9 times, they'd like to win it again because that's what they do. That's what they're trained to do.
That's bad for the people in Plymouth, Michigan, too. I mean, that's to me, that's who I mean, I know some people. I when I put out my tweet, I got a letter right away from somebody out there who just said, I mean, we've been, this has been their dream forever to have this tournament, and they've worked hard to make it happen. They've worked hard to promote it there, at least. I mean, it's not going to get the national promotion, but I get it. I get why the women have to. You need leverage. You have to do something, right? You have to have leverage, and they even understand that. But it's just it's hard. It's disappointing, and it's not the thing that's going to help women's hockey at all. If they don't get something done by the time this starts, like if they don't have some way of fixing this, it's not going to help anyone.
Well, and the other question is this lack of investment in the women's game, but investment in the men's game? Is this actually are they running up against some law? The only thing I can really think of is the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act of 2009. Obviously, Title IX doesn't apply here,
Right.
because they're not an educational institution. But that's another thing to take into account if they're actually running up against some true legal mishaps.
Federal standards that aren't being met. It's true. I've read that there is a possibility of that. And again, it's even more maddening because I think here's the perception, Kate. I think when we see the women on Twitter and we see them working out and we see them at games and we see them going to other countries, we're assuming they're making a pretty good living. Like that on the surface, it looks like everything's all right. And I always assumed that they were getting grants from companies to help them train and to pay for all these things. And then when you find out that's not the case, it's just, I get mad because it's like, how do you expect athletes to train on their own dime and then just come and play literally for pride and a few shekels? It's just, and then afterwards, the program is what gets all the rewards from it. I mean, yes, some players get some rewards, Hillary Knight and some other players get, but it's so far and few and far between. It's crazy. It really is crazy.
I mean, the amount of promotion, the amount of money that Hillary Knight's made in advertising, and she's probably the biggest one, right? Is very small. I mean, you're talking about. I mean, and that's the problem. I mean, where is that money coming from? Where is the $34 million coming from that's getting
3.5? It's 3.5, and it's coming from. There was a missed tweet on that, and that's why I got that number in my head.
Where's that money? Is that coming from the Olympic program?
It's coming from through the Olympics. Like when the host city gets that money, then it trickles down to USA Hockey for taking part in it. And
it's coming from me. It's coming from me. I'm the secret benefactor.
There's a percentage there.
That's confusing to me, and I think that's what a lot of people are confused about. Like that.
Yes.
That kind of
somebody had to explain it to me. I get it.
So USA Soccer, for example, is throwing this money to even the women getting $2 million or whatever they got. Right? They're throwing that money to them. And USA Soccer is getting sponsored by Adidas and by all kinds of. So this money is coming from sponsors. I think. I think that
it's probably a combination. But just imagine, okay.
And ticket sales and ticket sales.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So just imagine. I don't know what did for the World Cup? What did they pay for rights at that stadium in that last city? Like, well, give me a number. 100 million.
Yeah, right. But who's getting? And where are those rights going to?
So they get 100 million, and I'm sure Adidas put in 20 million, and somebody else, and whatever, and ticket sales.
Believe me, they tour around, and they are promoted greatly. And I mean, I've taken my daughter to 2 women's soccer games, and they're packed. 50,000 seats.
So the men got 35 million. If it were 100 million, that's a pretty good percentage there, right? And the women got 2 million.
Yeah. And it does trickle down, like Kate was saying, to the level of, the youth programs. Like my daughter wants to play hockey in the worst possible way, and she's got to play with boys if she's going to play. And I'm in Philadelphia. I'm not like in a southern non-hockey town.
Right.
It's crazy. And I mean, so she's played soccer instead because of that, because it's easy to play women's soccer. But
in the entire state of Connecticut, there are 2, which we have tons of hockey programs around here. There are 2 teams on which girls can play. Yeah,
and I just did an interview with somebody about the new thing they're building in Anaheim, which is this beautiful arena out there that for youth hockey, for the Ducks to practice at, and one of their biggest focuses is on having women's hockey, girls hockey teams, which is phenomenal, and because nothing like that in California has ever been possible. So. You just wonder. It feels dirty in every which way, because you just see, okay, Adidas is giving us all that money, and then Adidas saying, well, you better give that money to the soccer people because it's just what it feels like, and whether or not that's happening or not,
right?
It's what it feels like, because obviously, and women's hockey is not going to get the sponsorship dollars until there's something to sponsor, until there's girls hockey programs.
That's true. Look, these organizations are private organizations. They don't like divulging what they spend their money on. Perfect example is Hockey Canada, because when I was at the World Juniors, Renee Passel did not really want to say what people in the organization were making and where money was going. That was the last thing he wanted to talk about. So USA Hockey, when they put up their statement, they're not going to talk about how much salaries and other costs are affected by this. They're not going to bring any of that into it. So I don't know really what they're going to say other than there's an ongoing negotiation and they hope for that it clears up. There's a way for them to clear it up. They have to make it right. That's how you clear it up.
So Kate, before we go, let's play this out now. How do you think? How do you think this plays out? How do you think? Do you think that this event goes on without them there? Do you think they figure out something?
Well, with the women threatening to boycott, what would happen is if Team USA doesn't show up and USA Hockey declines to put the event on at all, they'll be fined $5,000 in September, which is actually pretty funny because if they did the same thing with the men's IHF Worlds, they would be fined $50,000. So that's interesting.
The fine is lesser.
Yeah, even the fine is lesser. That's actually the same amount as they would get if they refused to host juniors. But
$5,000, come on, that's insane.
It is. But that aside, I wanted to throw that in there because it just really it surprised me, frankly.
It made you mad. You could say it.
It did. It made me mad. But I mean, not even too mad. It just, I mean, you can't keep getting mad because then you spend your entire time mad. So I just added it in there. But but if what the women's team players said is that they simply wanted movement in the discussion. I think that movement could be very easily met. They didn't make any demands that we need to have this met, we need to have this salary, we need to have this. They simply said we want movement in our discussions. And I think that they've got what? They've got 2 weeks until Women's Worlds. I think they could do that. Yeah. Movement would not be too hard to meet.
Who's everybody, right? I mean, and the problem is, they all want to play. There's people on this team that are saying, "Oh, if you've ever been involved in an organization like this that's in this situation, it's really hard to get a group of. It has to be really bad for these women to say no. Like
that has to be real pressure act. Like
but within that team, this whole situation has to have gotten to a terrible point because there are women in that team, and this is not to be. There are women on the team who just. Because I've been with people like this before who don't need the money, who just want to play. They love this whole thing.
For many years, a lot of these women played on the CWHL for free. They want to play. They really just want to play at a level that is basically safe for them. Because if they're playing beer league like with me, they just get injured because we can't avoid them.
I interviewed the captain, Megan Duggan, probably 2 or 3 times. Kate's probably interviewed her a million. She's as good as any captain in any sport. For her to actually come out and speak against this team probably had to kill her because she is the most positive person I've probably ever met when talking about hockey of any kind. Yeah. So the thing that I get mad about is on social media, like today, everybody would be like, oh, this is wrong, sad face, and this should change. But you actually have to do something to make it change. And people actually have to put pressure on the organization to make it change. Just showing outrage isn't enough anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder what we can do. Is there anything we got to figure this out? If there's something
we don't know this part yet. Well, I guess somebody will tell us at some point who we could, contact or who.
Yeah, we get some kind of online petition going or something that we can do that can who knows? But it's very frustrating. It feels as if, you feel helpless in a situation. Obviously, I think talking about it is important in and of itself. But we have to keep talking about it. It is vitally important. Like I said, I'm not involved in women's hockey because I have a daughter who plays soccer, but I have followed women's soccer because of that, and to see what it's like. And there's no doubt the incredible aspect of having role models for young girls playing hockey, what that means to them. It's just that is my daughter's first book she ever read was on Hope Solo. Like the first thing she and she completely this whole thing is so vitally important moving forward that we have to, and that's where I get mad at the NHL because, and the reason I bring up the NHL, and I know it's probably not, believe me, I know things with the NHL don't go smoothly. So I'm not the one to sit there and say that that's the great.
Yeah, let's talk about the Olympics.
Right, I'm not saying that. Why I get frustrated is because I know these owners and I know how much money they have, and I know how, if I was in that situation, what a no-brainer it would be to do this, like to how little this would cost everyone to actually, to do this, and how much benefit would come down the line. It's ridiculous to me that they don't see that. Or if they do, if a few of them could just get together, and I don't know. I'm going to talk to some owners and see why they don't. I'm going to flat out do that because I just, why is there no support here? And see what happens, because I don't know that anything's going to come of it. But
I'm not going to see NHL owners stand up and give support, though. They're not going to do it.
No, and I mean honestly,
there's a whole new group of kind of owners like the Jeff.
They're not going to do it.
If there was a financial motivation for them to do it, they would do it. That's the reason why.
There are different kinds of owners too. There's and I believe me, I'm with you on some of, like, I'm not going to say
You don't need to say, but I'll applaud the first one that does. I'll stand up.
Yeah, I'm saying I'm not going to say you're like old school's 80-year-old owners are going to do this. But I'm saying that you've got like the Jeff Vinnings of the world and Craig,
Heisinger.
Hey, the news is out there. Nobody's tweeted yet. No owner has tweeted yet. So
I'm going to talk to them.
Sometimes it's also about whether or not this is good for not just how their business looks, but also personalities involved. And so it's kind of been a rocky road working with the CWHL and NWHL simultaneously for the few teams that have. And so it makes sense that they would want to either support one or not the other, or just support one minimally.
Well, the NHL does do a good job for the women within the NHL.
The one thing I could say for sure is,
but it's worth the high up in the NHL. There's not a whole lot of powerful women at all.
Well, we've got there's Susan Kohig. Don't forget about her. She actually had a big hand in setting up the Women's Outdoor Classic last year.
For sure.
And honestly, for the amount of time they had to put that together, I thought they did a pretty good job. So we can't forget about that. But you're right. There are not too many women up in the upper echelons of the NHL, and that certainly influences the way the NHL is going to view women's sports. It's going to be seen more as charity instead of an investment in the future.
You know what there are? This is just last thought, and this is kind of crazy. There are a lot of really powerful assistants, powerful people at the NHL, who are women that I talk to all the time, that can get more done than contacting a person directly at the NHL, and that absolutely.
That's true.
Those are the people that I really want to talk to.
Let's hope that happens. The one thing I'll say is, for all the knocking that I did of the Devils last week, I mean, look, Josh Harris had hosted the Isabel Cup over at their practice rink, and I think he's been hosting games there all year. Yep. And so, he's done more than most owners to keep the sport going. I give him some credit. Now,
Boston Bruins as well, who've hosted the Boston Pride all year, and who just put on a clinic, I believe it was last Friday, with both the Boston Blades and the Boston Pride, so CWHL and NWHL combined.
Yeah, some owners have done some things, but now this is a chance for them to really champion a cause.
And the Buffalo team in the NWHL plays at the Harbor Center, which is the same structure that the Pagulas built, and so
indeed, and even the interns got to shadow people at the Pagula. I want to say media conglomerate, but that's not the right word.
Entertainment group.
There we go. Thank you. At the entertainment group, to learn how to be a PR person, how to make the timing go down. Everything.
Is one of those owners, like in that group, that doesn't need money, is actually owning a hockey team for the love of it.
If you're looking for somebody to spearhead this, it would be Kim Pagula. She is, yes,
you're absolutely. That's a great point. She is actually the most powerful wife of any hockey owner in the NHL.
Wields as much power as anybody. She's involved with the Bills. She's involved with the Sabres. I would love to see her spearhead this because she would get things done.
I have a quick question for you. Is she the wife of an owner, or is she a co-owner?
She's the wife of Terry Pagula. Yeah.
I know, but what would she call herself?
That's a good question.
He calls her his co-owner. I've been
co-owner. She's the co-owner.
Yeah, I've been there. They are owned by the two of them. You will hear. I've been at events where you say they. He
knows who the boss in the family is.
No, and she's brilliant. And he's a smart guy, and he's really, and he knows how brilliant she is, and a great balance. They're a great balance. They work well together, better than their team has worked in the last couple of years. But
well, she's not the general manager.
Hey, she upgraded the food at the combine. She did a good job with that.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'll show you my gut. That'll tell you how good it was.
No, we don't need that, Mike. But
good that we were able to bring on an expert.
Well, thanks so much, Kate, for jumping on. I appreciate it really greatly. And,
thanks for having me. It was good to talk about this.
It's always good. And yeah, well, let's talk again before, if something breaks on this before in the next 2 weeks.
Absolutely. Sounds like a plan.
Well, remember to follow Kate on Twitter. I will put that out. I'll tweet out right after the show where you can do that. Anyway,
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right.
thanks. Take care now.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye. All right, so we're going to continue on with the NHL now that we've ripped them to shreds, and
You did, but that's okay.
no, I mean it 100%. I don't care who's mad at me at the NHL or the USA Hockey for this, because this is absurd. I know there's people too well. There's too many smart people there to let this happen. It's just insane.
I'm still waiting on the statement. We haven't gotten it yet.
Yeah. So when we get that, even if it's tomorrow, we'll read that.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. Totally.
But we had a very eventful night in the NHL, didn't we?
Yes. Why don't we talk about that?
Well, I mean, first of all, looking at, let's look at the West first, because I think that we may be on the verge of basically sticking a fork in the LA Kings, because they had 2 back-to-back games against the Blues and against Arizona. They lose outright to the Blues, and they only get a point out of Arizona. If you look at St. Louis's schedule, I think they have 14 games remaining, and I know any team can beat any team going down the stretch, apparently, obviously, but the Blues play the Coyotes 3 times and the Colorado Avalanche 3 times. To me, that's game, set, match. It's over.
It looks like that, but this is not the year to say that yet. It's crazy.
Can I tell you what's really going to happen?
No, I mean,
right. Russ is right. Russ is right. Okay,
Yeah.
this is what's going to happen. And I had a huge issue with my program. So we really bring up the Kings because they were getting screwed by my thing until we figured it out. My wife and I yesterday during our blizzard, we figured out what the hell was wrong, why the Kings were getting the short end of the stick, and we fixed it. So the Kings are not battling the Blues, because you're right. The Blues have it, right? They're in it, right?
You think they're battling the Oilers, is what you're saying?
I think they're battling the Oilers and the Flames. I think one of those 3 teams gets in. I think the Predators make it and the Blues make it. But I think it comes down to Edmonton, LA, and Calgary, and that's where right now actually my thing has them 2 points ahead of Edmonton, 1 point behind Calgary. So it's really tight. That's where you have the whole thing playing it out. I can see because you're right. The schedule for the Kings is not bad either. The Kings have a pretty good schedule. Edmonton is the team that really has to start worrying, because Calgary's playing so well right now. It's hard to, sit back and say,
10 games in a row, and they're playing Boston tonight, and Brian Elliott apparently has an illness, so Chad Johnson will go in net for them. But yeah, I mean, they've won 10 games in a row. If they lose 10 in a row, then maybe they're in danger. But I think this long winning streak is, they put them in a very enviable position.
No, it is. They're in a great position, and they're going to just keep winning. So I think that, but Edmonton.
But this is also assuming that Jake Allen stays. That this version of Jake Allen doesn't go back to the other version of Jake Allen.
True. That's all true, but I think that I think the Blues have their schedule is just so favorable, and their travel, everything about it is favorable.
Yeah, but Russ, you're not factoring in the savior known as Carter Hutton.
I just, this is just such a weird year. Like, it's probably going to come down to the last couple of teams that could win 5 games in a row. Like, that's really what we're looking at now, because, even though the Kings look to some like they're completely out of it, they ended up getting a point because of the crazy point system.
Right,
they clearly didn't play a great game. It doesn't matter. They still got a point. And
they beat a couple teams before that they shouldn't have beat necessarily.
Right. And it's just, you just day to day, it is so hard to figure these teams out. Just when you think a team is out of it too, they do come out of nowhere. And so it's very hard to put any team out of the playoffs. I know people even want to put the Flyers out. I did last year, and I always go back to they made it on the last day. I don't expect it to happen this year, but I can't put them out yet, because if they were to win 6 in a row, they would be in the same boat.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. And the Islanders schedule is just so easy too that's what really messes up the other side of things. Like the Islanders, they come home for a bunch of games. I mean, they're not always great at home, but the weird thing about the Islanders schedule is they literally have I forget what it was, some kind of crazy 5 games on the road, then 8 games at home, then 3 games on the road type schedule, where they don't which is really fascinating. Where you're not going out for a game or something like that, and that's great for a team. When a team does that, teams will take that any day of the week. I mean, that's what.
I mean, Eck, when Russ and I were talking about the Islanders' performance at Barclays on Monday night, against Carolina. I mean, JF Berube looked like an ECHL goaltender. And there are some indications that and I don't know if they've officially called him up, but I heard that there's a really good possibility they are calling Halak up from Bridgeport because Berube played that badly. And if that's the case, then, I mean, from every indication they have to do that because honestly, if Garth Snow is willing to give up a playoff spot because he doesn't like Yaroslav Halak and Halak has a problem with sharing duties with Thomas Greiss, too freaking bad.
Here's what I think is going on. I think they're saying that they're having internal discussions because I think the owner will force them to bring up Halak regardless and play him when necessary to stay in the race. I think that's what it's going to boil down to, whether there's an issue between the GM and the player. There isn't an issue between the player and the owner, and I think at the end of the day, the owner is going to make it happen.
Yeah. Now yesterday, Greiss plays. They fall back 2-0. They fall down 2-0 to Carolina in the first period. The Islanders come back with 2 in the second period and then win it on a ridiculous John Tavares blast in overtime. And now that happens. Tampa Bay breaks Ottawa's 6-game winning streak. They win. And I'll tell you something. Even without Stamkos, even trading Filppula, trading Boyle, I mean, Braden Point, and this is, I heard somebody this morning was saying, well, Braden Point, it was Pierre Maguire. Well, people were talking like Braden Point is come out of nowhere. I mean, yes, everybody knew about Braden Point at the World Juniors. It's just a shock that he has been this good in his rookie season as an NHL player. But you watch it; he was He was one of the best players on the ice last night, Russ.
Yeah, he even understated it. I spoke to Braden Point at an NHL event over the summer. I haven't aired that interview yet. I probably should, and I think even he would be surprised. He was clearly not, if I remember correctly, not 100% on making the team or probably doing anything he's doing. He's definitely ahead of schedule. There's no doubt. I do want to also say in the Islander game, big factor is Josh Hosang. Like, he had a great game. He had a tremendous one-time goal that was just fantastic. He set up Tavares on the overtime winner. Like I've always said, he has all the skills and the speed. If he stays out of the box and stays disciplined, he can definitely play in this league. He could be the missing person that Tavares has been looking for if he could just play good hockey. So this is a big deal for Hosang down the stretch here.
And Braden Point in that game in overtime walked around Erik Karlsson, which some people would say is not that difficult to do, but he did. He walked around Erik Karlsson, had a really great chance before they eventually scored the game-winning goal. So everything went wrong for Toronto yesterday. After winning 3 close games in a row, after they lost 5 in a row, Mike Babcock gave them a couple days off. Apparently they went fishing and enjoying the sun in Florida, and they came out, and 18 seconds into the first period, they gave up a goal. They give up 3 goals on 8 shots in the first period. They get hammered by Florida, who was in desperation mode, 7-2. And now Babcock has reorganized his defensive pairings after one bad game, which to me, right now, if you're reorganizing your defensive pairings, it just tells you don't have a good enough defense, and that's always been the problem with the Leafs. And I think in the end that's going to kill them. But I hope it does. And a lot of the rookies, with the exception of Mitch Marner, starting to look like they're a little gassed.
Here's the thing, though, and this is what I think it's really just a joke in Toronto that the media has made such a big deal about this fishing trip. Really, this is a big deal that guys went fishing. They had a day off. They're allowed to do whatever the hell they want on a day off. No, the media has nothing to say about it. The Leafs don't have anything to say about it. This is collectively bargained. And now all of a sudden you're trying to tell me that because they had a good time on their day off, which you don't know what they even did other than they went fishing, this is what contributed to a loss? Come on.
Well, Russ, you know, it's a results-oriented business. If they came out and they won 6-2 and buried the Panthers, and everybody said, "Oh, that was the perfect thing. Let them go out, let them relax, let them get."
Superstition business, guys. It is. It's like the superstition's at the bottom of some of that too. I've been around franchises enough to know that if you're winning and everything's going right, don't do anything differently. Like, don't do anything wrong.
It's the New York Giants Odell Beckham thing. It's just like that. It's like, okay, they have 14 games in the last 28 days of the schedule right now. The Leafs do. So this was the last opportunity for them to have a day off where they could get away from things. I get that, but honestly, I mean, I don't think a day off is really going to harm them, but the perception is out. The perception is out there. And I think in the end, it's not going to be that kills them. It's going to be their inexperience, and it's going to be whether they have anything left in the tank. And that's the thing I'm a little concerned about, is that a lot of the rookie players, some of them who are not used to playing 82 games and playing as many minutes as they have been under Babcock, playing, whether they have anything left at the end of the year.
Also, I mean, I think what hit home last night with the loss to Florida for them is the fact that now you're going to play teams that are playing playoff games.
Yep.
Like it was a playoff game for the Panthers. You're not just playing teams that think you're the Maple Leafs and this could be a night off, or this you're going to watch Austin Matthews and it's going to be an interesting game. Tomorrow night is the game of the year for Toronto. I mean, tomorrow night they have Tampa, right?
Yep.
And that in Tampa, that to me, if they can come out of that with a win, everything's possible. But if they lost, then really they're not going to catch Tampa. Tampa's going to get the spot. I really believe that. I think Tampa's going to get the spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have the wherewithal to be able to do it. They have the coach that has the experience to be able to do it. A lot of things are riding on their side. The funny thing is, when we're talking about these teams, the team that still gets really no discussion are the Pittsburgh Penguins. Everybody discussed the Capitals, saying, well, they built up the Capitals. Capitals are built up. They're the team to beat. No, the Penguins are still the team to beat. They may even catch the Capitals now with half of their blue line decimated by injuries. They're the team that's really the most dangerous in the East. They have the most depth. I understand on paper the Caps look good, and we say that every year. The Capitals are going to have to beat the Penguins, or somebody else is going to have to beat the Penguins in the playoffs for the Capitals to win the Stanley Cup. It's the only way it's going to happen. And right now, the Penguins are kind of showing us all, hey, we have a great – I mean, here's a funny thing, okay? And you could say this on most years. The Crosby, Jake Gunsel, Connor Sheary line is one of the best in hockey. Is it one of the best in hockey because Jake Gunsel and Connor Sheary are tremendous players? They're good players. They could skate well. But this is on the back of Sidney Crosby. It always has been. It always will be.
Well, one last note. You said that the Tampa game was the biggest game of the year for the Leafs, and it probably is. And they'll have a series of biggest games of the year going in the last 14 of the year. After Tampa, their next 3 games are at home against Chicago, at home against Boston, and on the road against Columbus. To me, those 3 games are much bigger than the 3 games that they played last week that they won against 3 non-playoff teams. They come out of this 4-game stretch 1-3, they're done.
Yeah, no, and
nobody's done, Mike. I'm telling you.
At the end of the year, they've got the Caps at the end of the year. They've got some other games too.
They play 6, and this will be the biggest challenge. And if the Leafs make the playoffs, they will have earned it. In the month of April, in 9 days, they play 6 times. The only easy game for them, and I'm saying easy in the sense of the opposition, is Detroit. Then they play at Buffalo, Washington, Tampa, Pittsburgh, and Columbus.
Yeah, these are and those teams are going to be battling for playoff spots. All of them. They're all battling for playoff positioning. They're all battling. I mean, I was talking to people in Columbus, and they're not. I'm saying, it would probably be, off the record, probably be nice for you guys to finish into the wild card, right? You get out of this, you can get out of playing this division, playing out of this division, and they're like, no, we're going to catch the Caps. These teams are all in a different focus. I mean, there are 3 points behind the Washington Capitals right now with a game in hand.
There's very few losses down the stretch for these competing teams. There's no question about it, and even some of those bottom dwellers, like I said, I don't want to face Carolina if I'm a team. Now, Colorado is historically bad, and I think we all could have figured at some point if it didn't click, they would be historically bad because I keep talking about the Patrick Roy hangover. There is definitely a hangover from this team having him as coach, trying to walk into the position of taking over a team that he had, and it just shows you last year they had 33 more points than they do this year. And the team isn't appreciably better or worse than they were last year.
No.
That coaching was a difference.
We have to touch on the whole Olympic thing right now because I know until there's a final resolution, it's going to be sort of fascinating but also annoying because it keeps coming up. Bettman made had made a speech, I guess, with some in front of some Edmonton businessmen yesterday, and indicated that it's not looking good for the Olympics in 2018. But then Pierre LeBrun comes out yesterday and says that, you know, they would be amenable to going if the PA would guarantee that they would not exercise the option to renegotiate the CBA in 2020. So essentially not an extension of the CBA, but just labor peace for the 2 more years and not ending things early. I don't think the PA is going to go for that.
But the PA is going to do that anyway, but don't friggin' tie it to this thing. That's what's so frustrating. The PA is not going to not do that. I mean, that's if that's the case, that's ridiculously stupid.
Right, but think of it this way. He knows the PA is not going to do that, so that gives him another reason to say we're not going. He knows the PA will not do that, because then it would appear as that if they're
right, but it's so stupid in the relationship of these two sides to throw that kind of to just even play that kind of power play. Like,
yeah,
there's no reason to play a power play right now. You know, it's just everything is going well. You know,
the only reason to play into the power play, as you're saying, is to have the appearance of saying, okay, it's not our fault that we're not going. They had a chance to go, and they decided they didn't want to do. This is the blame game, and I don't agree with it. But in the end, I don't think the NHL wants to go to the Olympics, and they don't want the blame for not going to the Olympics.
They definitely don't want to go to the Olympics. I agree with you 100%. But they also have partners who want to go to the Olympics. So that's where I think the NHL is in trouble. I think the NHL. That's why they have to make this look to NBC like they did everything possible to try to go.
Right, and that's why they don't want the blame, because their rights holders want them to go. But that's why the NHL doesn't want. If the NHL has all the blame for not going, then the rights holders will be peed off. But if they say, well, the PA had their hand in this, they didn't want to go, they didn't want to give us labor peace, they didn't want to do this or do that, then there's an excuse there. There's a built-in excuse, and that's what I think that they're driving for here.
Wow. We should really talk about some of these college players that are signing up too, because there are some really interesting things for us. What's been the biggest one that surprised you so far?
Biggest one, I guess Mike Vecchione, because I don't know when the Flyers had him in camp if he wanted to sign, although when I spoke to him, it seemed like he did, or they just didn't want him. But now he's playing great for Union, and nobody can get him until after the East Regionals at least, unless they were to go to the Frozen Four again. So that's one that's sort of surprising to me. Mike has brought to my attention Alex Kerfoot, who is a Devils prospect, and they haven't signed him, and he's been really terrific for Harvard for all these years. I liked him. I first noticed him in the Junior A Challenge. He had a lot of speed, a lot of stick and puck skills. He could score. He doesn't have great height. He's not a big guy, but is a guy who I think could play third line minutes in the NHL, and they haven't signed him. And between him and there's a few others. He's an August 15th guy, though. You'll have to wait. Will Butcher, the defenseman, who's the captain for University of Denver, who also was drafted by the Avalanche, he hasn't been signed yet either. That could go to the August 15th also. So there's a lot of those guys, and Mike knows a few others, and it's an interesting time of the year for this.
Well, the intriguing thing, Ek, and we'll keep an eye on this, and none of the KHL free agents have signed yet, but some of them can, because some of the KHL playoffs are going on right now, and teams are getting eliminated. But they probably won't sign contracts that are good until next year. There's a defenseman on Magnitogorsk named Victor Antipin, who is purported to be the next Nikita Zaitsev, 24 years old. A good two-way defenseman, can skate, apparently may want to come to the NHL, and there are teams out there. I know Elliot Friedman reported that the Sabres are in on him, but there's a number of other defensemen and other players, and you could see a slight exodus from players in the KHL. And we know that teams with Zaitsev having success, with Radulov having success, they're going to look to the KHL as an option to bring in players on entry-level deals that'll be cheap and low risk. And I think that's a direction we'll be looking at during the summer with some of these players.
Yeah, I got 3 more players, too. I've got Max Verana, who played for Princeton. I think he has a chance of getting signed. Jake Kulovich, who's a senior at Colgate, has an excellent chance of being signed. And Tim Harrison's actually Calgary property, but he's another August 15th guy. And, you know, he's a big kid, 6'3", 205. So this is a way for the NHL teams, if they sort of lose out in free agency, some of them are going to go pretty heavy on these kids.
I know you got to go, Russ. We're going to hit the Zach Aston Reese stuff. We'll hit that tomorrow. We'll talk about that.
That's he's a big name.
Big name in
And
Pittsburgh.
shockingly, he goes to Pittsburgh. Boy, the rich get richer.
Well,
All right, so
the Rangers have been able to lure guys too, but I'm not shocked. He's the big name. I'm not sure he's the best, and so we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah, talk about that tomorrow. NHL Draft Lottery Simulator time. Before we get out of here today.
Okay.
Okay.
Ready?
Here we go. I'm ready, I think. Putting it up here. Yep. All right, here it comes. And today's winner is the Winnipeg Jets. Then followed by the Colorado Avalanche. You really want this one. And then the LA Kings. Wow, that's a surprise. Wow. That sounded sick. All right. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much to you guys both for picking up the slack yesterday, for crying out loud. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you all tomorrow. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Have a good day.